All right, so when you have negatives in this process, it changes it a little bit in terms of figuring out your two middle numbers. So let's review really quick. If you add a negative to a negative, what does that give you? A negative. If you multiply a negative and a negative, what does that give you?
Positive.
A positive. If you add a positive and a negative, do you automatically know if it's going to be positive or negative? No, it depends on which one is bigger. And that's important when you're trying to figure out what these factors are. So I'm going to do this one with grouping. So I have x squared plus something plus 40. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together to give me 40. They're adding together to give me negative 13. So if they multiply together to give me a positive number, what do I know about them? Yeah. So if I know that they multiply together to give me a positive number, what do I know about them? They're going to both be negative or they're going to both be positive. In this case, how do I know they're both going to be negative? Because the middle term has to be negative, so they have to add up to a negative number. Let's put those phones away, please. So let's factor 40. I have 1 and 40, 2 and 23. Is 40 divisible by 3?
No.
No. Is it divisible by 4?
10.
5?
8.
So 5 and 8. 6?
Nope.
If it's not divisible by 3, it's not going to be divisible by 6, just FYI. Get those out of your ears, please. 5 and 8, not divisible by 6. Is it divisible by 7? And then we're back to 8 and 5. So these are all of our factors, and because this is positive and this is negative, we know these are all negative. So what pair of those adds up to be negative 13? Please pass that to Mercedes. And you should be writing all of this down, guys. What do we put, which pair of those adds up to negative 13?
Negative 5 and negative 8.
Yep. So we've got negative 5x and negative 8x. It's on the worksheet. Number 4, number 2, and number 4. So now I'm going to factor by grouping. 2. So I've got x squared minus 5x plus negative 8x plus 40. Remember that negative has to stay with that number. So what can I factor out of the first one? The x squared and the negative 5x?
Oh, no, you're both saying one, sorry. You didn't factor it out x.
Okay, so I factor out an x. X times x gives me x squared. X times what gives me negative 5x?
Wait, what?
What's the second term going to be?
Oh,
Negative 5. Now this one's a little bit tricky. What can I factor out of the second one?
no, here's the you want the negative in there. You want right?
Okay, so if I factor out, let's try that. If I factor out a negative 8, then what do I have for this? X. And then what do I multiply negative 8 by to get positive 40?
Oh,
Negative 5. And this term is the same. If I had only factored out a positive 8, this would have ended up being a negative x and a positive 5, which is not what I want, because I need these two to be the same. So I have to watch out for that, the negative. So then I have a common term there, or common factor, so x minus 5 times minus 8. That's my factored form. Number 4, once again, we have to deal with some negatives. We're going to use the box and diamond method with this one. So I'm going to start. No, you got like 5 people in front of you and nobody's going anywhere until I'm done with the lesson. What do I put here? Yep. My first term. What do I put here? Negative 6, my last term. And what do I do with those two terms? So, negative 6x squared. And what do I put on the bottom? My middle term. So negative 5x. Then I need to factor 6. So I've got the factors of 6 are 1 and 6. 2 and... what's 6 divided by 2? 3. And then I'm back to 3 and 2. Now, if my top number is negative, so they multiply together to give me a negative, what do I know about my numbers?
No, one of them is negative and one is positive.
One of them is negative and one of them is positive.
Does it matter which one, or?
It does. Because if they add together to give me a negative number, is it going to be the bigger number that's negative or the smaller number that's negative? The bigger number. So I have negative 6, negative 3. Those are my bigger numbers on this side. So which pair of those adds up to negative 5x, or negative 5? Did you guys catch that part about the negative? If they multiply together to give me a negative number, that means one of them's negative and one of them's positive. If they add together to give me a negative, that means the bigger number is the negative one. Yes. So, which pair of these, 1 and negative 6, or 2 and negative 3, add up to give me negative 5? 1 and negative 6. They got 1x and negative 6x, and those go into these two boxes. And then I factor. What can I factor out of this column? What can I factor out of negative 6x and x squared?
Negative 6.
No? Because x squared doesn't have a negative 6. What can I take out of both of those? Come on, guys. Negative 6x and x squared are both divisible by what? X. And then I build it around there. X times what gives me x squared? X. X times what gives me negative 6x? X times what gives me 1x? 1. And 1 times negative 6, does that give me negative 6? Yes. So my factored form is x plus 1 times x minus 6. Alright, so that's how you deal with that when you have negative numbers in your trinomials.